Star Wars Tabletop Gaming is proudly supported by Gatekeeper Games, your key to gaming unplugged. A tabletop games store offering a friendly atmosphere for people to buy and play their games in the north of Fitzroy. Welcome to episode 8 of Star Wars Tabletop Gaming. In today's episode, I want to discuss whether buying 2 core sets is the right option for you, for all of us, as the case may be. So I've done a bit of research into an existing miniatures game from FFG that I'll talk about in a minute, and using kind of the release schedule, the prices, everything from that miniatures game, it's given me a bit of an idea on whether buying 2 core sets for Star Wars Legion is the right way to go, or whether holding out a little longer for the individually boxed sets of the same units is the better way to build an army. So, enjoy. To discover if buying 2 core sets is the best value and the way to go when Legion drops, I've done a bunch of research and sleuthing in one of FFG's previous released games, Runewars Miniatures, which was released in April 2017, that is this year. So by looking at the Runewars release schedule, their costings, what we're getting in the core set, all that kind of stuff, I was able to come to a bit of a conclusion. So I'll talk you through it, and we'll work it out together whether buying 2 core sets is value, or what actions you should take when the set drops. So, Runewars Miniatures. As I said, the game was released in mid-April 2017. I'm not sure how popular it's been. I looked at it briefly, but it didn't really kind of, I don't know, get my goat. And then, of course, once I heard there was going to be a Star Wars miniature game, there was no hope for the poor thing. But essentially, the core set, which looks like pretty good value, has a bunch of units in there, a bunch of miniatures, released in April 2017 at, I think it was $99 US, which is pretty good value and only $10 more than Star Wars Legion core set. Now, on the month that it was released, a third faction was also announced a couple of weeks later. So that's late April 2017. This bodes interesting things for Star Wars Legion. So look, I would super love some kind of scum and villainy faction. We've seen it in X-Wing, we've seen it in Imperial Assault, maybe, I think. I don't play it that much. So considering how keen they were to release new factions, and there's actually a 4th faction recently announced for Runewars Miniatures, I would say that it's not out of the realm of possibilities that we might be seeing a 3rd faction announced probably either November or February, depending on when it comes out for Star Wars Legion. So keep that in mind. If the Imperials or Rebels aren't really your cup of tea for whatever reason, you're wrong, but you may have your reasons, then a 3rd faction is quite a possibility. So, late April, 3rd faction, which was the Elves, was announced. Now, by May, all core set units had been previewed in separate boxes, and they were then released essentially by the end of June. We'll get into pricing a little later. No, we'll discuss that now. So, in Australia, it costs about $35 for a separate unit for Runewars. You get about 10 miniatures in that box, or $65 for the bigger miniatures, of which you get 2 in a box. So keep that in mind when we start talking about pricing, or what I think prices might be for Legion later on. So as I said, in June, there were new commanders, and the core set units were all separately boxed and released by the 15th of June. Now that's only 2 months after the core set was released itself, which is pretty good. So hopefully, 2 months after the core set of Legion is released, we can hope for there being Stormtrooper, Rebel Trooper, AT-AT, speeder bikes, and new commanders, not being Luke or Vader, released in individual box sets. In regards to Runewars Miniatures, by mid-August, the 3rd faction was released. That was the Elves. So that's 4 months after release. That was the 17th of August. So if there is going to be a scum and villainy faction or something else, who knows what it could be? Maybe guns, we can only hope. We can expect that to be released 4 months after the core set box, if that's what you're waiting for. So now, by October, this is only 6 months after release, both core set factions have had extra units and commanders available for purchase, above and beyond what they got in the core sets. And the 3rd faction has been released and has 4 new units itself. So that's pretty good. So we're seeing extra units coming out for the miniature game only 6 months after release. But saying that, that's 6 months. 6 months is a long time, and I'll definitely want to be playing some Legion in those 6 months. So it looks like the core set units are the ones we're going to be using. Now, by the end of the year, so by the end of 2017, Runewars Miniatures has advertised that there will be 2 more units released for each of the core set factions, and 1 further unit for the Elves, and of course, a release of a 4th faction. Now that's exciting. So they're obviously going wide with the factions more so than deep with the units. Whether they'll follow the same route for Star Wars Legion, we'll just have to wait and see. But overall, that's a really impressive release schedule over 8 months after the release of a new game. And quite frankly, I think Legion will be a lot more popular than Runewars. So we should expect, this kind of release schedule, if not more intense and more frequent with more units from Star Wars Legion. So that's really positive. It's really good to see from FFG, and the costing seems really reasonable. So that's another plus as well, and not what I'm used to from miniatures games. Let's go into a bit of a cost analysis. So that's the release schedule. Cost analysis. So the core set, Star Wars Legion core set, we're looking about 130 Australian dollars or 89 US dollars for those that live halfway across the world. Individual units. Now, we obviously don't have confirmed prices for individual units. We know what their sizes are going to be, so we know what the units are going to look like because the unit cards are capped out at a certain amount of miniatures, i.e. you can get 1 extra regular trooper and 1 extra specialist trooper. The speeder bikes obviously can't have more speeder bikes in them, and the ATRT is a unit of 1. So we're most likely only looking at, I guess, maybe 7 to 8 miniatures in a box, giving you the extra options for different weapons if they choose not to make the weapons usable on multiple miniatures, which they may, in which case they only need, what's that, six miniatures per box. That's assuming, of course, that the unit cards that come out in the individual box sets aren't different to the core set unit cards, which we can't guarantee, and frankly, I think it's going to be 50-50. Do we need, units of 20 stormtroopers kicking around? Definitely not. I don't think so, and I don't think that's the way FFG is going to go. I think we'll look for squad sizes of no more than 10, and that's for units with weaker models in them too. That's my supposition. We'll wait and see. But if we're looking at around 8 miniatures in a box, I think they're going to be priced at about 30 to 40 Australian dollars. And that's pretty competitive. So I'm not going to compare it to Games Workshop. You can do that yourself. But I would be more than happy of paying about $35 for a Stormtrooper unit. I don't see anything wrong with that. They might go larger box sizes just to cut costs on, I guess, packaging and shipping, in where you get, 1 box has 2 trooper units in it, and that sells for, I don't know, $50 to $60. If not a little more, and that'd be fine. It'd be an easy way to do it. I wouldn't have a problem with it. In regards to costing for the speeder bikes and AT-RT, I'm guessing anywhere from about $35 to $50 for a box of them. Runewars Miniatures has, if you buy some stone golems, you get 2 stone golems in a box set. I don't think we'll be seeing 2 AT-RTs in a box, and I certainly don't think we'll be seeing 4 speeder bikes in a box. So I expect boxes of 2 speeder bikes and 1 AT-RT, and I'm thinking about $35 for $50, which will be pretty good. Commanders themselves, I think we're going to cost about $15 to $20 a pop for a commander. Runewars has the double commander boxes, one generally being on a mount and one being on foot, and they cost about 35 Australian dollars. So all reasonably priced, and these prices I've come up with are based on what we've seen from Runewars, and I think that should give us a good guide on what we'll see going forward for Legion. So that's our cost analysis. Now, when it comes to value, so looking at this compared to the core set, so theoretically speaking, taking these prices that I've just thrown out into account, we're looking at, and this is at a minimum, about $220 of value in the core set, and that's if FFG price their units very competitively, or if they decide to go a bit more expensive route, which, noting the IP, they no doubt could and may do, you're looking at about $300 of value in that core set. Now, noting that core set only costs $130, this is all Australian, that's really good. And that's not even considering the dice, the templates, the terrain, and the rules that come with it. So the core set will definitely be a good deal. Noting, of course, that your second commander is wasted in games terms, which will come to about $30 to $40 value. Take that into account. Certainly, I wouldn't mind having a second Vader to paint up and just be generally awesome. Try some different things, some conversions. Who knows? Get crazy. So yeah, look, that value is fantastic. So keep that in mind. All right, now, looking at the individually boxed unit options, we know that FFG have a habit when they're releasing their miniatures, their box sets, like for X-Wing and Armada, the miniature's great, you definitely want the miniature, but the real value, that comes in those box sets is the upgrade cards, and maybe the unit cards if they differ from the core set. So it's almost certain that you're going to get these individually boxed units because they're going to have maybe specialist troopers we don't see in the core set. Maybe they're going to have extra grenade options, extra tech options, cool stuff that you want to get your hands on. So keep that in mind, that the individually boxed sets will most likely not be a repack of the core set. If they are, that makes our decision to buy 2 core sets a lot easier. Looking at army composition. So what will you want your army to look like? The core set force, when we're talking about points, Vader will cost about 240 points with some upgrades. The speeder bikes, you're looking at about 50 to 60. The stormtrooper unit, you're looking at about 80 to 100 points, depending on what role you want them to fulfill. So all in all, your Imperial core set force will come to about 500 points. Now we know that, or we've been told, maybe regular games of Legion will be at about 800 points worth. So obviously, 1 core set does not give you enough to play 2 full, proper tournament level, whatever that means, games of Legion right from the start. Nor should it. That'd be far too impressive and cost a lot more than it currently does. So 500 points for the Imperial side. The Rebel Alliance side, Skywalker's going to come to about 200 points once you've given him some upgrades. Your AT-RT is going to be anywhere from 80 to 90 points, depending on what weapon you give it. And your Rebel Trooper units will be a bit cheaper than Stormtroopers. They're probably going to be around 70 to 80 points per unit. So fully kitted out, your Rebel side, or kitted out to a competitive level, what would make sense? Your Rebel side is going to be about 430 points. 70 points less than the Imperial side because their troops are a tad cheaper, which is just fine. So what does that mean? So to play full games, you're going to need kind of double what you get in the core set. That's pretty clear. And look, if you do buy 2 core sets, what you'll get, I think, will make up a really strong, well-balanced army. I'm definitely going to want 4 trooper units with whatever army I'm playing because they're the units that are getting around, capturing objectives, staying alive, putting pinning tokens on people. Cheap units, pinning tokens, morale, that's going to be a really interesting strategy and a tactic. And I think going a bunch of trooper units, more so than specialist units, will definitely be viable. I'm going to want 2 speeder bike units, definitely. Going up the flanks and kind of crossing over, overlapping arcs of fire as they speed past, that's a thing. And I'm definitely going to want 2 AT-RTs as well. I'm going to want a flamethrower on one, maybe not the best option, but a lot of fun. And I'm going to want to put a longer range weapon on one as well. Magnetizing is an option, but I'm going to want to have both in a battle. So if I buy 2 core sets that will give me the options for all different loadouts, it'll bring my force straight up to 800 points right away, and I won't have to wait for the individually box sets to get released, which we know from the Runewars miniatures schedule will probably be, most likely, around 2 months after the core set gets released. So that's what your army is going to want to look like. 2 core sets will definitely give you a balanced force and something that you're going to want to play with. The risk, of course, is that the individually sold units will actually maybe their upgrade cards or even their unit core cards be more flexible or have stronger upgrade options. And now your core set units, if you've bought 2, are looking a little limp. So that's something to take into consideration. So taking all of that into mind, the cost analysis, the release schedules, what options we'll be looking at, what you want your armies to look like for those first few months of the game being released when we've only got limited units, my advice is this. I think you should wait until the core set gets released. From the news releases that we saw with Runewars miniatures, either beforehand or about 1 to 2 weeks after, the individual units will be announced. Then we should get a good idea on whether they're going to be simple repacks or if they're going to give us a lot more options. That is my advice. So pre-order 1 core set, make sure you get your hands on it. FFG games are being more and more popular these days. I know L5R is extremely hard to get your hands on, and my local store, Gatekeepers, actually sold out from its pre-orders alone, which is extremely impressive. And I think Legion might be the same, which is really exciting. In regards to waiting the 2 months for the individual box set, that's not too bad. 2 months goes pretty quick, especially when you're painting up a couple of armies. So I wouldn't be too stressed about the wait time there for those individual box sets. FFG have shown they get things out pretty quick after the core set gets released. Obviously, if you only want to play Rebels or Imperials, there's really no reason to get 2 core sets, unless you have a mate who's willing to split it with you, who likes to swing the other way from whatever army you're taking. So there we go. When it comes to buying 2 core sets, I would hold off for now with your pre-orders. I would wait. I'd pre-order one, and then when we know what the individual box sets are going to look like, I'd either lock in your second to get some good value out of it, maybe save about $150 if you want to play both armies, or I would hold off if the upgrades are going to be a lot stronger, and just bite the bullet and buy the individual units to get your hands on the goodies. So, thank you very much for watching, and may the Force be with you.